Leon Festinger's groundbreaking work on cognitive dissonance revolutionized our understanding of human behavior. His remarkable story weaves together the threads of social psychology, personal conviction, and intellectual curiosity in a way that continues to influence contemporary thought. Get ready to unravel the fascinating life of a man whose ideas still challenge our deepest assumptions about why we believe what we believe. As we delve into the life of Leon Festinger, it's essential to explore his early years, which laid the foundation for his future work in social psychology. Born on May 8, 1919, in New York City, Festinger grew up in a family that valued education and encouraged intellectual curiosity. His parents, Alex and Sarah Festinger, were both immigrants from Eastern Europe, and their experiences likely influenced Leon's later interest in social identity and group dynamics. Festinger's childhood was marked by a strong emphasis on learning, with his parents fostering a love for reading and exploration. He spent much of his youth in New York City, attending public schools and developing a keen interest in science and mathematics. This early exposure to scientific inquiry would later shape his approach to understanding human behavior. As Festinger entered his teenage years, he became increasingly fascinated with the social sciences, particularly psychology and sociology. These early influences sparked a desire to understand human behavior and motivated him to pursue a career in psychology. Festinger's educational journey took him to the City College of New York, where he earned his undergraduate degree in psychology. It was during this time that he began to develop his research skills, working under the guidance of esteemed psychologists like Otto Kleinberg. Festinger's graduate work at the University of Iowa further solidified his foundation in psychology, with a focus on social psychology and statistics. One of the most significant influences on Festinger's intellectual development was his time at the University of Iowa, where he worked alongside prominent researchers like Kurt Lewin. Lewin's work on group dynamics, social influence, and cognitive processes had a profound impact on Festinger's thinking, shaping his later theories on cognitive dissonance and social comparison. Festinger's relationships with his contemporaries were instrumental in shaping his ideas and approaches. His interactions with psychologists like Stanley Schachter, who would later become a close collaborator, helped refine his thoughts on social psychology and motivated him to explore new areas of research. These connections not only expanded Festinger's intellectual network, but also provided a platform for testing and refining his theories. As Festinger's academic career progressed, his interactions with influential thinkers like Kurt Lewin continued to shape his intellectual trajectory. One of the most significant concepts that emerged from this period was Festinger's theory of social comparison, which posits that individuals tend to evaluate their own opinions and abilities by comparing themselves to others. This idea would later become a cornerstone of his work on cognitive dissonance, as he explored how people reconcile discrepancies between their self-image and external realities. Festinger's time at the University of Iowa also marked the beginning of his collaboration with Stanley Schachter, a fellow psychologist who shared his interest in social psychology. Together, they conducted a series of experiments that examined the dynamics of group affiliation and social influence. One notable study, published in 1950, investigated how individuals adjust their opinions to align with those of a group, even when the group's views are clearly incorrect. This research laid the groundwork for Festinger's later work on cognitive dissonance, demonstrating how people often prioritize social harmony over objective truth. In the early 1950s, Festinger joined the faculty at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he began to develop his theory of cognitive dissonance in earnest. He drew upon his earlier work on social comparison and group dynamics, integrating these concepts into a comprehensive framework that explained how people cope with conflicting ideas or values. According to Festinger, cognitive dissonance arises when an individual holds two or more inconsistent beliefs, or when their behavior contradicts their self-image. To reduce this discomfort, people often engage in rationalization, denial, or other strategies that reconcile the discrepancy. One of the most famous experiments illustrating cognitive dissonance was conducted by Festinger and his colleague James Carl Smith in 1959. Participants were asked to perform a mundane task, such as sorting objects into categories, and were then paid either $1 or $20 for their efforts. After completing the task, they were asked to tell another participant, actually a Confederate, that the task was enjoyable and worthwhile. The surprising result was that participants who received only $1 for their work reported enjoying the task more than those who received $20. This counterintuitive finding demonstrated how people tend to justify their actions by altering their attitudes, rather than acknowledging the true motivations behind their behavior. As Festinger's work on cognitive dissonance gained momentum, he began to explore its implications in various real-world contexts. One notable example is his study on the aftermath of a failed prophecy, where he examined how individuals cope with the dissonance arising from the discrepancy between their beliefs and reality. In 1956, Festinger and his colleagues infiltrated a doomsday cult that believed the world would end on December 21st of that year. The cult's leader, Dorothy Martin, claimed to have received messages from aliens warning of an imminent catastrophe. Festinger's team observed how the cult members reacted when the predicted apocalypse failed to materialize. Instead of abandoning their beliefs, the cult members experienced intense cognitive dissonance, which they alleviated by rationalizing the failure of the prophecy. They claimed that the world had indeed been saved, but only because of their own faith and prayers. This phenomenon is a striking illustration of how people tend to cling to their beliefs, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Festinger's work on cognitive dissonance also led him to investigate the role of self-justification in human behavior. He argued that people have a fundamental desire to maintain a positive self-image, and that this drive can lead them to engage in self-justifying behaviors. For instance, when individuals are confronted with evidence that their actions have caused harm, they may rationalize or deny the consequences to avoid feelings of guilt or shame. In another notable study, Festinger and his colleague, J. Merrill Carlsmith, explored the effects of forced compliance on attitude change. They found that when people are coerced into performing an action that contradicts their beliefs, they tend to experience cognitive dissonance. To reduce this discomfort, individuals may alter their attitudes to align with their behavior, a phenomenon known as the foot-in-the-door technique. Festinger's relationships with his contemporaries continued to shape his ideas and approaches. His interactions with psychologists like Elliot Aronson, who later became a prominent researcher in social psychology, helped refine his thoughts on cognitive dissonance and its applications. Aronson's work on the pratfall effect, which shows that people tend to like individuals more when they make mistakes, resonated with Festinger's ideas on self-justification and the maintenance of a positive self-image. As Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance gained widespread acceptance, it also attracted criticism and controversy. Some researchers argued that the theory was too broad, encompassing a wide range of phenomena without providing sufficient explanatory power. Others questioned the methodology used in Festinger's experiments, suggesting that the results may have been influenced by demand characteristics or other experimenter biases. As Festinger's work on cognitive dissonance continued to evolve, he began to explore its implications in the realm of social influence and group dynamics. One notable study, conducted in collaboration with Henry Ryken and Stanley Schachter, examined the effects of cognitive dissonance on group cohesion and decision-making. The researchers infiltrated a UFO cult known as the Seekers, which believed that a catastrophic flood would soon destroy the Earth. The group's leader, Dorothy Martin, claimed to have received messages from aliens warning of the impending disaster. Festinger and his team observed how the group members reacted when the predicted flood failed to materialize. The study also revealed an interesting aspect of group dynamics. When the cult members were faced with disconfirming evidence, they became more cohesive and committed to their beliefs. This finding led Festinger to propose that cognitive dissonance can actually strengthen social bonds within a group, as members work together to reduce the discomfort caused by conflicting information. Festinger's work on cognitive dissonance also had significant implications for our understanding of persuasion and attitude change. He argued that people are more likely to change their attitudes when they are forced to make a decision or take an action that contradicts their existing beliefs. This idea is illustrated by the foot in the door technique, where individuals are asked to perform a small favor or make a minor commitment, which can later be used as a basis for requesting larger favors or commitments. In another notable study, Festinger and his colleague Elliot Aronson explored the effects of self-justification on attitude change. They found that when people are induced to justify their actions or decisions, they tend to experience a reduction in cognitive dissonance. This reduction in dissonance can lead to a more positive evaluation of the action or decision, even if it was initially perceived as undesirable. His interactions with psychologists like Stanley Milgram, who conducted the famous obedience studies, helped refine his thoughts on the role of social influence in shaping human behavior. Milgram's work on obedience highlighted the power of situational factors in influencing people's actions, which resonated with Festinger's ideas on cognitive dissonance and self-justification. Some researchers argued that the theory was too narrow, failing to account for individual differences in motivation and personality. As Festinger's work continued to unfold, it became increasingly clear that his theory of cognitive dissonance had far-reaching implications for our understanding of human behavior, particularly in the realm of social influence and group dynamics. One of the most significant aspects of his research was the concept of dissonance reduction, which referred to the ways in which individuals attempt to alleviate the discomfort caused by conflicting information or beliefs. Festinger's experiments on dissonance reduction revealed that people often employ a range of strategies to reduce cognitive dissonance, including rationalization, denial, and even self-justification. For example, in one study, Festinger and his colleagues found that individuals who were induced to make a decision that contradicted their existing beliefs would later attempt to justify that decision by seeking out information that supported it, while avoiding information that challenged it. This phenomenon has significant implications for our understanding of how people form and maintain attitudes, as well as how they respond to persuasive messages. Festinger's work suggested that people are more likely to change their attitudes when they are forced to make a decision or take an action that contradicts their existing beliefs, rather than simply being presented with persuasive information. Festinger's research also explored the role of social influence in shaping human behavior, particularly in the context of group dynamics. His study on the Seeker's cult, for example, revealed that when the group members were faced with disconfirming evidence, they became more cohesive and committed to their beliefs. The implications of this research are profound, suggesting that groups can become increasingly entrenched in their beliefs, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. This phenomenon has been observed in a range of contexts, from cults and extremist groups to political parties and social movements. Festinger's work on cognitive dissonance also intersected with the research of other prominent psychologists, including Stanley Milgram, who conducted the famous obedience studies. The two researchers often discussed their findings and shared insights, with Festinger noting that Milgram's work provided a unique perspective on the role of social influence in shaping human behavior. Festinger's own research, meanwhile, offered a nuanced understanding of the psychological mechanisms underlying obedience and conformity. As Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance continued to evolve, it also attracted criticism and controversy. Leon Festinger's groundbreaking work on cognitive dissonance has left an indelible mark on the field of psychology, forever changing our understanding of human behavior and the intricate dynamics of social influence. In the words of Festinger himself, the tendency to reduce dissonance is a basic process that occurs whenever an individual holds two cognitions that are inconsistent with each other. As we strive to find balance between our thoughts, feelings, and actions, we would do well to remember that true understanding lies not in avoiding discomfort, but in embracing it. That's all for today's Psych with Sigmund. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.